we discussed about utilitarianism, and then we have also discussed about deontology, right? So when we discussed about consequentialism, I have discussed with you as part of consequentialism utilitarianism. That is a mostly like acceptable concept. Like we discussed about egoism, ethical egoism, and ethical altruism also. But altruism is not possible because the inherent assumption is individual is almost in all cases a selfish. So his interest is very important. So that is the reason why we went for utilitarianism. And the concept was all about maximum good for maximum number of people. The greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. So there in these two approach, we are trying to see the actions, whether the action is moral or not, on the basis of two aspects. On the basis of the ends of the action or the consequences of the action. This is what consequential ethics. In that we have discussed about utilitarianism. Okay, the other two also we have discussed, but we are not that interested in the other two. And then we have discussed about based on the means, right? So this is what deontological ethics. So actions are understood to be moral in terms of means and ends. On the basis of end, if the end result is positive, if the end result is providing greatest happiness to greatest number of people, or if the end result is increasing the pleasure and reducing the pain, then this approach, utilitarianism approach, then the action is considered moral. If greatest happiness for greatest number of people. If the means are followed correctly, it is the duty based ethics. Okay, that is what deontological approach. And we have discussed about Immanuel Kant in the context of deontology. And I've told you Mahatma Gandhi's concept is also similar to this deontology. Follow the duty. It considers individual. We all have unconditional role of performing duty. So some duties are unconditional and we have to perform that. There is no way in which the end will justify the means for that school, right? So here I have discussed with you the Krishna's advice to Arjuna during the war. So this two approach, keeping in mind, you can solve some case study, but there is one more approach, that is what? Virtue based ethics. Now why this is important is because it's like this one is going to be universally applicable. It doesn't matter what is going to be the outcome. It doesn't matter what is going to be the means. Okay, here also the means will come, but it all depends on the character. It depends on certain qualities or certain attributes. And that's why this one is more universally applicable, the virtues. Now what do you mean by virtue? Virtue is the desirable attitude. Okay. So when we discuss about virtue, it is the desirable attitude. Now, what is the opposite of this? Vice, right? So when we discuss about vices, what are the vices? It is the bad attributes, the non-desirable attributes, or you can say the bad attributes. So if you see a few examples for virtue, like courage is a virtue, okay? Tolerance is a very important virtue, and you are going to write in most of your case studies about tolerance because you will be put in a situation where you need to solve the problems. So tolerance is going to be one of the most important virtue which is required and which has to be maintained at that situation. Integrity, honesty, anytime this is important virtue. Okay, courage is an important virtue. Justice, temperance. We'll discuss all these words, keywords separately. So I hope you understood when we discuss virtue, it is the desirable attitude. So what is virtue based ethics? There are certain these things which are universally applicable irrespective of the ends and means. And that is what we are actually going to discuss. Vice means the bad attributes like hatred, okay, anger, jealous, all these will be coming under vice. So this is not we are going to talk about. We are basically discussing about the virtue. Okay. So this theory is actually focusing on the or inculcating different set of virtues. And here mostly or most important people that we are going to discuss is Aristotle, But Aristotle, we will discuss the concept of golden mean, or before Aristotle, we will discuss about Plato. Actually, Aristotle is the disciple of Plato, or even before Plato, we need to discuss about Socrates. Okay, so Plato is the disciple of Socrates. So we will start with Socrates. Basically, when it comes to Socrates, the most important virtue is knowledge. So I don't think that I need to discuss about this. This is very much self-explanatory. So Socrates is talking about knowledge. Knowledge as the most important virtue, and knowledge will solve most important problems also. Okay, so for Socrates, knowledge is the most important virtue, or even you can combine Socrates and Plato. You can give 4 important virtues, or these 4 important virtues are also known as the 4 cardinal virtues. Okay, I'll give you that 4 cardinal virtues. So as I've told you, when we discuss about Socrates, it is knowledge is the most important virtue. So these 3 are the classical thinkers when it comes to virtue based ethics. We discussed about Bentham when we discussed about utilitarianism. J.S. Mills also we discussed about utilitarianism, but Bentham's utilitarianism, both are utilitarianism. Bentham's utilitarianism was gross utilitarianism, but Mill's utilitarianism was refined utilitarianism. So here quantity was important, here quality was considered important. Now utilitarianism is also known as hedonism. Towards the end of this session I'll talk about this. Hedonism. Hedonism is also talking about pleasure. Moral action will be the one which increase the pleasure and the one which decrease the pain. That is exactly what we have discussed under utilitarianism. So hedonism is actually the version of utilitarianism only. Even in hedonism also, you will see gross hedonism and refined hedonism. It is nothing but gross utilitarianism and refined utilitarianism. Refined utilitarianism is the concept given by Mills. Gross utilitarianism is the concept given by Bentham. One taking into consideration the quantity of happiness. Quality doesn't matter. Okay, the other consider quality as important. So Socrates, when we discuss about knowledge, so other thinkers also we need to discuss very much under the same concept of virtue based ethics. The most important is actually Plato. So Plato has given 4 important virtues, and you can say 4 cardinal virtues. 4 cardinal virtues. What are they? First one, wisdom. Hardik, your mic is on. Can you turn off your mic? Yeah. So the first one is wisdom. Second, when we talk about courage, then temperance. I'll explain all these. Temperance, and the 4th one, justice. So justice I will take separately also. We will discuss about what are the different types of justice. We'll talk about reformative justice, retributive justice, distributional justice. All the different dimensions of justice we will cover towards the end of the session. But these 4 we need to explain now. So wisdom and knowledge. Okay, so like what you study from the textbook, that is what generally you consider as knowledge, and the application of knowledge is what wisdom. So wisdom is at the highest level, how you apply your knowledge. Okay, so courage is self-explanatory. Now see, what is the context, why they are talking about this virtue? So ancient society, or these are Greek philosophers, so Plato as well as Aristotle. So during that time, the wars between Athens and Sparta, 2 important cities, okay, and Spartans won the war, Athens lost the war, and they actually, after they lost the war, they want to restore the glory. So Socrates, Aristotle and Plato are finding the reasons why Athens lost the war. The main reason that they come up with is actually there is a problem with the moral order. The society is totally morally degraded society. It is because of the kings also. Kings also have very much a big role to play here. So morally degraded society, and the ruling class, that means the kings, were illiterate and ignorant. Kings were illiterate, that means no knowledge, and also ignorant of the people. They are not taking care of the people also, the public. Okay, so they have not ruled properly, and some other vices. These are actually vices. Illiterate is vice, ignorant is a vice, which is not expected. So that is the reason why they were replaced by others. Okay, so in this context is what they came up with the concept of virtue. So it's not important from our ethics point of view, but I'm just talking about the context in which this concept of virtue was given. Now, if you look into this Sparta, how the Spartans won is because they have one of the very important or good virtue, that is courage. It is actually, they were militarily very strong. So courage is also considered as a very good virtue. Okay, so when we discuss from the point of view of civil servants also, we will discuss courage as a very important virtue. Which context? We will be discussing about this whistle blowing. Okay, so if you need to blow whistle against the organization, then you need courage for that. So courage is one of the most important virtue that any civil servant need to have. So that context only I'm discussing this. So this is a context. Okay, so these are the 4 important virtues. What do you mean by temperance? So this one, wisdom is the application of knowledge, courage, temperance. Okay, so temperance is like a moderate life. So having a principle of moderation in life, like avoiding the extremes and having a balanced life. And that in another way you can say adopting a mean between extremes. So avoiding the extremes. That's what you can understand as temperance. And justice means fairness. As of now, just go with this word fairness, and I'll come to this justice later, and we will discuss this concept in detail, because they can ask you a separate and specific question about justice. So we will discuss about different types of justice, like retributive justice, reformative justice, distributive justice, everything we'll discuss. So these are the 4 cardinal virtues: courage, temperance, and then wisdom and justice. This was directly asked in 2014 or 15. In one of the year, this 4 cardinal virtues was asked. Okay, so that's about Aristotle and Plato. And now we will also discuss about Aristotle. Aristotle is actually the disciple of Plato. Now, this also was asked, or this can be used. This can be, used in writing many answers also. So Aristotle is talking about the concept of golden mean. So for him, golden mean is a virtue. Just 1 minute. And for him, justice is the supreme virtue. Justice is the supreme virtue. Okay. So this knowledge, courage, bravery, perseverance, all are there. All will not make a morally good character for man. But at the same time, it is always good to go with, golden mean. Extremes, again, here also we are not talking about extremes. So he rightly distinguishes the moral virtues from intellectual virtues. So this golden mean is the most important concept that he is talking about. And he talk about justice in 2 different dimensions: distributive justice. Justice is the supreme virtue, most important virtue among the 4 that we have discussed so far. Okay, distributive justice and remedial justice. I'll come to this, but before that, you can write in your answers in any situation. You will follow golden mean, and this is actually the best approach to solve case studies. And also, in case if you need to write any examples from your own life, if they're asking, give an example from your own life, that in this situation what you will do. Okay, I'll give you the questions later which has been asked so far. So the golden mean is always better to follow. So it can be, you can write various other concepts like compassion. Okay, for example, Mother Teresa, you can talk about compassion. Okay, and then Mahatma Gandhi's concept of tolerance. Okay, so all these democratic socialist republic, that is a preamble, that is again a virtue in fact. So Aristotle, we are going to discuss about the golden mean concept, and justice is most important virtue, or the most supreme virtue is justice. And 2 types of justice: retributive justice okay, and remedial justice. So we will come back to this distributive justice and remedial justice later. Now, there is one more concept, that is ethical relativism. Ethical relativism means when you judge the actions, the same action may be moral in society A but not be moral in society B. That means the ethical principles or the guidelines may be different in two different societies. So there is a very famous saying, when in Rome, do as what Romans do, right? So for this society, you may doing something, it may be ethical, but that may not be ethical in this case. So this is the idea of ethical relativism. Now, depends on the condition that you need to answer. I'll give you one example for this, but you will not come across those kinds of situations. For example, there is a tribal group in Africa. Okay, so they don't want to have female babies. Okay, the reason is the population will be increasing if there is more and more female babies. So to reduce population, what they will do is they will kill the female, and for them the reason is the shortage of food. Okay, so in this context, it may be ethical for them and it may be accepted for them, but a modern society, it may not be accepted. It may not be a morally good behavior. So the point is, this is what you mean by ethical relativism. Some actions may be considered ethical in one society, but not ethical for the other society. Okay, so that is ethical relativism. Now, opposite will be what? Opposite is ethical absolutism. So when we discuss about ethical absolutism, what is this? It is exact opposite to relativism. That means the actions, there are some concepts which are ethical for all society, like integrity, honesty, telling truth, and all these, love, fair, compassion, tolerance, justice, all these are ethical in all society. That is what ethical absolutism. So in case if there is a short note which is asked on ethical relativism and ethical absolutism, relativism means ethics may vary between society. Okay, society to society, the guidelines of society may vary. The behavior, the action, the way it is judged may be different. So the different intellectual parameters will be taken into consideration, and different social parameters also will be taken into consideration while judging the action is moral or not. So that is what you mean by ethical relativism. Like, this is almost similar to what we have discussed in the first session, that some values are universal, right? Eternal. Some values are context specific. That is the same context here. We are extending it to the level of ethics. So here, some values are universal. This is universal. That is what you mean by almost this one, ethical absolutism. Some values are context specific. That is what you mean by relative ethics. So in some context, it may be ethical. In some context, it may not be ethical. I've told you that will again be useful in the context of euthanasia. Okay, in the context of capital punishment also, in the context of even killing people. So those examples that we have discussed. So ethical relativism and ethical absolutism. Now next concept is rights-based ethics. Rights-based ethics. So what do you mean by rights? Rights are actually the the entitlements which are recognized and sanctioned by the state and accepted by the society. So we all are given certain entitlements just because we are the part of society, we are the members of society. So some entitlements which were given by the state, and it is also accepted by the social order or the society. Okay, so this is what you mean by rights. Now what do you mean by rights based ethics? Upholding the rights, that is what ethical, and if you are violating the rights, that is unethical. Okay, upholding others' rights is also considered as ethical, and violation of others' rights is considered unethical. Okay, so upholding the different rights of different individuals and groups. It can be individual rights, it can be group rights also. I'll come to the group rights. So upholding the individual also the group rights is ethical, and if you're violating, that is unethical. Okay, and this is again, this right based ethics is actually classified into two areas, like individual ethics and then group ethics. Okay, so again similarly, this group individual rights and group rights. Within this group rights is what all these legal rights. Okay, and when we talk about constitutional rights, all these are group rights. Okay, so constitutional rights, right to life, all the fundamental rights, everything which will come under the group rights. So right based ethics means it is very simple. What is rights? Rights are the entitlements which are given to individual and also to the groups by the state, and which are accepted by the society in totality. So upholding the rights is ethical. If you are violating the rights, it is an unethical action. So you can expect a question on this also, human rights. Okay, now further, those rights that we have discussed, there can be different rights, like political rights, it can be civic rights, it can be socio-economic rights, it can be religious rights, like that are the different dimensions which you can see in the context of rights. Okay, but rights means entitlements. In all these cases, we are actually talking about what? We are only talking about different entitlements which were given by the state and which are accepted by society also. So human right means these are the rights which we are enjoying just because we are human. So when we are talking about human rights, then we also need to talk about animal rights. Okay, that we will discuss later. Let's now talk about human rights. So which context this human rights and all these came? So human right is because we are entitled certain rights, certain virtue, or just because we are humans. Okay, so human rights are, the basic fundamental rights which are required for the existence and dignified life of individual. So any rights or any entitlements which is required for the dignified life of individual is considered as human rights. So human rights having a broader connotation, and it is having a broader dimension. So dignified life of individual, and these rights are universal in nature, and these are inalienable. Inalienable means not separate, it is inseparable. Okay, so now when first time this human rights were prepared, 1948, after the World War II, December 10, there was a document, the first document upon human rights by Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This is the first document which explicitly talk about the human rights, which was prepared in 1948 after the war. Now the problem with this is actually non-binding, and it's a voluntary document. So, and it is expected that different countries will adopt these documents, and who will protect these? UNSC, okay, HRC, etc. In India, when it comes to who will protect the rights? National Human Rights Commission is there, Supreme Court, High Court. National Human Rights Commission have not much role to play. It is advisory in nature, but Supreme Court and High Court will exercise the writ jurisdiction to protect the rights, and especially in the context of fundamental rights. Okay, so this 1948, the first document, and after that there were two more covenant, the covenant on civic and political rights, then covenant on social and cultural rights. These are not important. What is the context? The context for this Universal Declaration of Human Rights, if you see, it is because of the killings, like a lot of atrocities which has been happened during World War I and World War II. The concentration camps, the communal Holocaust, around 6 million people died, and the Jews were burned, and almost 6 million Jews were burned in the concentration camps. This fascism, Nazism, etc. And it shook the collective conscience of the international community. And post-World War, there were trials also related to this, war crimes or crime against humanity, and the trials were there, And in this context only, this Universal Declaration of Human Rights document was published. Okay, to protect the rights of the human, to provide a dignified rights life to the individual. So human right is a very important topic. So during the war period, even first war and second war also, there was rise of fascism and Nazism in Italy and Germany. So fascism is actually the broad ideology, Nazism is a very specific ideology. I hope you know that. In the world history context you might have studied that. So German Nazists under the leadership of Hitler killed almost 6-7 million people. All the Jews were targeted and they were burnt in this concentration camps. Okay, so it was a very tragic incident, and international community went against this, and ever since the need was felt to protect the human rights and the dignified life of the human. And this trial, what is that trial? Nuremberg trial. What is this trial all about? Charges were mainly crime against humanity. Okay, so against this context only, this human rights document was published. Okay, now the institution to protect human rights, as I have told you, UN Security Council, okay, UN Human Rights Council and other UN agencies all will protect the human rights. In case of India, NHRC and Supreme Court, High Court. So this you might have studied in detail in polity. This also you might have studied in polity. And this is through the writ jurisdiction. Okay. So if you get a question, right, like there may be different possibilities in which the case study can be formed with respect to human rights. Even malnutrition is actually violation of human rights. If you are not getting the food, it is actually against human right. Okay, and manual scavenging, that's against human right. Child labor, bonded labor, all these are against human rights. Forced labor and bonded labor are same. Human trafficking, prostitution, all these fake encounters, Godhra riot, all those religious riots, custodial gang rape, custodial death, custodial torture, AFSPA. This is very important one. This can be asked in the context of human rights because a blanket protection is given to the army, right? And they are given all choices to violate the human rights. Okay, so these all can be asked as case studies. So where you need to discuss about the role of National Human Rights Commission, you need to discuss the role of other agencies also in the context of India. We don't have much to discuss about this. In case a theoretical question is asked, you may need to write about this context and everything. Otherwise, mostly this kind of questions will be asked as case studies. So you need to mainly write about the role of National Human Rights Commission, State Human Rights Commission, etc. But what is the problem with this? See, all these organizations, all these institutions, all these are established as an independent body in India, right? Even Election Commission also, all these are established as independent body, but ultimately they all are serving as an extended arm of the government. Even CBI also, Enforcement Directorate also, all these organizations, Intelligence Bureau, even RAW, and all these organizations are serving as the extended arm of the government. So the independence of these organizations is actually in question. Okay, and over politicization, lack of autonomy, okay, is a problem with respect to not only this institution, in general I'm talking about. Even if you're writing GS answer or essay also, their hands are tied and they have not much role to play as given in the paper. Okay, in theory they have all this independence and everything, but actually the autonomy is not there. These are just serving as the extended arm of the government. But when you're writing all these, you have to write it very carefully and you have to write in a very good language also. So I hope these points, just note down these case studies which are possible. All these manual scavenging, okay, child labor, bonded labor, forced labor, human trafficking, prostitution, custodial death, custodial rape, this Madhura gang rape, okay, AFSPA. AFSPA is very important. Caste and communal violence, LGBT community issues. Okay, so this 377, LGBT, all this. So that's about right-based ethics. Now I will discuss about this concept of justice. So 2-3 important concepts need to be discussed here. As I've told you already, when it comes to Aristotle, justice is the most important virtue. Okay, so we have seen two different dimensions of ethics, justice there. Here I will talk about justice on the basis of crime. Like when some crime has happened, we have certain principles. So there are three different types in the context of the crime. This I will discuss. And also we will have to discuss about distribution of resources. Not only justice is not only based on crimes, it is all about distribution of resources also. How we are distributing resources to the citizens, to the poor, to the rich, and to everyone. So that also we need to discuss. Distribution of resources. Okay, so now when it comes to crime, there are three types. First one is retributive justice. Now this retributive justice concept is actually the justice is done by punishing the person for the crime he committed and nothing else. So he committed crime X, and for that crime there is a section in IPC, right? Or in the context of India, there is a section in IPC or any other specific acts. So he will be punished for that crime which he committed. That's what retributive justice. And see, he committed this crime, he will be punished. If this law was there in force at the time of commission of the crime, okay, that means he committed this crime. After that, a law was made, like another law was created with respect to this crime, and he cannot be tried under this law. What is that known as? Ex post facto law. That is not possible. Okay, in the criminal cases, ex post facto law is not accepted and not possible. That means there is no retrospective effect. You might have heard this retrospective taxation, etc. So in the case of civil cases and in other, like some new taxes are introduced. So you might have seen the Vodafone case, right? Retrospective taxation. So retrospective effect was given. One tax law was passed and retrospective effect was given. That means you can tax from last 10 years and last 20 years, etc. That may be possible in that context, but in case of criminal case, this is not possible. Ex post facto law is not possible. Retrospective effect cannot be given. There is no retrospective effect. That means you committed the crime. That time, what is the law in force? You will be tried only on that basis. There is another law formed later, and that cannot be, used for the trial of this case. For example, this one rape is committed. That time it was 376. Okay, 376 rape was defined, and the punishment is, let's say, lifetime imprisonment. Okay, so imprisonment for life. Now rape was made like a capital punishment. Rape was made, it's like a capital punishment. But at the time of commission of the rape, the punishment was not that. So he will be tried and he will be getting whatever punishment is actually there at the time of commission of the offense. That is what you mean by ex post facto law, or no retrospective effect for the criminal cases. And there is a proportionate principle also here when it comes to retributive justice. Proportionate principle means punishment is given in proportion to the crime and the nature of the crime. What type of crime he has done, in proportion to that, the punishment will be given. Or what is the nature of the crime, on the basis of that, the punishment will be done. So that is what you mean by retributive justice. Now, our system is not this. It's not a retributive system. Okay, what is our system? Our system is reformative. Reformative justice. What is this? It actually focuses on reforming the criminal through various means. It can be rehabilitation, it can be rejuvenation, it could be counseling, okay, moral education, skills, vocational training. Okay, what is the idea? The idea is not to the idea is basically to hit the crime and not the criminal. Okay, so counseling, reformation, that is what the focus is all about, except in the rarest of the rare cases. Okay, so hit the crime and not the criminal, hit the sin and not the sinner. That is a concept of Gandhi. We have discussed about 7 sins also according to Gandhi.
Okay, so that is what reformative justice. The third concept is related to justice by deterrence. Deterrence principle. So what is this deterrence is all about? Deterrence is basically to prevent. So when you're giving harsh punishment, like in Saudi and all, if you see, the harsh punishment will be given for stealing, the arms is cut, right? And similarly, public trial. Okay, so in case of any heinous offenses, so that is going to create deterrence. So that is what the, it will create fear and terror among the minds of the people. So fear or terror of law and punishment, and that will be created among the minds of the people, so there will not be commission of crime. Okay, so these are the three different types when it comes to crime: retributive justice, reformative justice, and justice on the basis of deterrence. Deterrence principle is basically to create the fear or terror among the minds of the people, so that the particular crime will not be done. One more you can see, that is compensatory justice. So compensatory means, you can see from this word itself, it is exactly the word meaning. There will be compensation given. It involves the compensation to the victims. It can be through different means. It can be through a different intervention. It can be financial, or it can be livelihood, or it can be anything. So some compensation will be given. Okay, even now also it is there. Even in other countries also, some criminal who might have killed some people and the capital punishment was given. But if the family is ready to, take some compensation and say, okay, then they may get relieved from that. Okay, so not necessarily compensation over there, but compensatory justice is also another important dimension of, justice. Like it can be through giving a job also, or it can be giving any livelihood. That is why, for example, a husband has died, so employment is given to the wife, or the elder son or elder daughter. That is a kind of compensatory justice. Or financial justice, a lump sum amount will be given. Okay, so distributive justice. Next one, distributive justice. Aristotle was talking about distributive justice also. What is that context? It is related to the distribution of resources, and that is what socio-economic justice. Distributive justice or the socio-economic justice. Okay, so here mainly the focus is on affirmative action. I'll tell you the context and everything here. So affirmative action means positive discrimination, or in simple language, it is all about reservation. Okay, so the idea of Aristotle, there is a very famous statement by Aristotle: it is unjust to treat equals unequally. It is unjust to treat equals unequally. Two people who are equal, but you cannot treat them unequally. At the same time, it is also unjust to treat unequals equally. You got it? So a Brahmin and a Dalit, if you talk, these two are unequals. You cannot treat them equally. If you treat them equally, this is not a justice. At the same time, Brahmin and a Brahmin, these are equal. If you treat them unequally, then it is again not justice. Now, why I'm talking about this example is because I'm assuming that all the Brahmins are enjoying the similar privilege and the Dalits are deprived. That is the context in which I'm discussing. And that is the reason why we are going for affirmative action of Dalits. What is the idea? These are unequals. Unequals must be treated unequally, not equally. If you treat the unequals equally, that is not justice. Now, in which context I'm talking about? For example, if you talk about education, see, the society is based on open system. Current society is based on open system. There is a stratification. There are some people who are talented, they get the best postings, best jobs, etc. For example, IAS, IPS and all those things. At the top level, you will come. But who's having more chances, Brahmins or the Dalits? Those, even though you're talking about it as open competitive exam, everybody can write this exam, everybody can become IAS and IPS. But is it possible in practice? You need to have solid foundation. You need to have a better education. Not only education, your economic background, even your health also is important. Your family background is important. Okay, so everything is important here. Even your security, the safety, the Dalit person who may not have job, his parents also may not have job, his safety and security is again a big question. He may not think and feel like preparing for this exam whole time. He may also search for some other job. So obviously he will be in a disadvantageous position when he is competing with a, forget about this Brahmin, like let's talk about upper class and lower class. Okay, this person is having all the privileges and all the facilities, all the good teachers, all the good materials and teaching staffs and every facility is there. So the point here is, even though you're talking about this is open and everybody can have access to this, but there are obvious limitations. Okay, so what the main assumption here is, assumption is equality of opportunity for all. So that is the assumption, but is that a correct assumption? No, everybody is not equal. They are not getting equal opportunity. The advantage that this person have, this person's son have, and this person's son have is entirely different. Right from the beginning, right from the primary education, in terms of health also, in terms of the food they eat also, emotional security also, the context is different. So you cannot assume that these two are equal. These two are unequal. Ajay, please turn off your mic. So these two are unequal means they should be treated unequally. That's the argument of Aristotle. Equals should be treated equally. Unequals should be treated unequally. Okay? It is injustice. It is unjust to treat the equals unequally. At the same time, it is unjust to treat the unequals equally. I hope you understood the statement. Okay? So Amartya Sen is also going with the same principle, but he is talking about reservation. He is talking about socio-political empowerment. So through affirmative action, through reservation, or through protective discrimination, all these are the same words which is used for reservation. Now here, I hope you understood the problem with this meritocracy. The one group, meritocratic society or the meritocratic group, they will argue for the society. You see, what is their argument is, there are different positions. Like this is more important position, and this has to be filled with more talented people, most important people. So for that, you need to give more rewards. And when you're giving more rewards, there will be a status which is created. That is the arguments of meritocratic, those who are arguing for meritocracy or the elitist system. But what is the inherent assumption in that? Assumption is equality of opportunity or equal opportunity was given. But that is not actually happening. At least in the context of India, that will never happen. Okay, so what can be done? What can be done is, those at this level must be taken to the top by giving reservation or affirmative action or protective discrimination. Okay. Now, there was a question in 2015. John Rawls' concept of theory of justice. He is also talking about distributive justice. In fact, the origin of distributive justice in the modern times, in the contemporary times, is actually start with John Rawls only. Very important. So what he gave a concept of this wheel of ignorance. Wheel of ignorance means people are ignorant about their position. Nobody know their position. Okay, no person know about their position, who he is, okay, whether he is rich or poor, etc. So you can take all the possibility. Wheel of ignorance is all about, it's a situation wherein people do not have any idea about their position in society. So they don't know what is their position in society, whether they are rich or poor, strong or weak, no idea. And this position is what their original position. And from this original position, people are deriving the principle of justice, which can be acceptable to all. Okay, so principle of justice that will emerge from original position, and that should be acceptable to all. The concepts like liberty of all, equality of opportunity for all, and then there is a difference principle. So these are the three principles. One, liberty. Second, equality of opportunity. Third, difference principle. This is most important. This difference principle is what is allowing you to treat people differently. So according to Rawls, differentiation of people in the society is justified as long as this differentiation help in the upliftment of the weaker section of society. So this difference principle is accepted if it helps in uplifting the weaker section. So this is the origin of this affirmative action and reservation and everything. In other words, you can say difference principle is valid so long as it contributes or benefits the weaker section of society. So you have to take into consideration of the weaker section. The unequals to be treated unequally. This way, you can say John Rawls created the scope of intervention of state to remove the inequalities in society. So how can the state remove inequalities in society? Treat the unequals unequally. Okay, so now we'll talk about Amartya Sen concept. When you go for interview also, they will ask you this: Amartya Sen versus Jagdish Bhagwati. Professor Jagdish Bhagwati versus Amartya Sen. We don't want to discuss about Jagdish Bhagwati. There is no ethics involved over there. So we will discuss about Amartya Sen. Now, if you need to understand Amartya Sen concept, you need to also understand about Jagdish Bhagwati. So he is basically talking about trickle-down approach. What is trickle-down approach? You should focus on growth. When growth is there, it will be trickled down to each and every sections of the population. That means everybody will get benefit if the growth is there. Like unemployment issue can be solved through employment opportunities will be created, poverty will be reduced. Okay, so inequality will be reduced. So all these will come with the trickle down. So first, growth is important. Social development will be coming automatically. But what Amartya Sen says is the reverse. You have to focus on social development. Development is more important than growth. Once development is there, growth will automatically happen. That is what the version of Amartya Sen. Okay, so he is basically stressing on resource distribution or through subsidies. Amartya Sen took this theory, John Rawls theory in the Indian context. You go for reservation, you go for resource distribution, okay, and distribution of subsidies, affirmative action or reservation. All these are what you need to do. Focus on social development. So people must be empowered. Once people is empowered, automatically the growth will come. Exactly opposite assumption. Okay, so he also has given the theory of justice, where he has focused on the capacity development of an individual or group of people. How can it be done? Through reservation, through resource distribution, etc. So his theory of justice is related to developing the capacity and empowering the people. And this approach is what you call as bottom-up approach. Empowering the people. Focus on that. This approach is what you call as top to bottom. Trickle down means what? You throw something to the top, it will come down. So when growth is there, automatically development will come. That is what trickle down, that is what top to bottom. But Amartya Sen is talking about bottom up approach. So not trickle down here, not top to bottom. Okay, top to bottom approach should be replaced with bottom up approach. So the idea is to teach how to catch the fish. That is also important. And who will interfere here? It is the state who need to interfere here. Initially, there may be laws, because when you are giving subsidies, when you are giving resource, and when you are going for development through subsidies, initially state may face problem, fiscal deficit and all. But over a period of time, if you are doing this, growth will come. May or may not be true, but as per ethics, we will have to discuss about this. As practically, if you see, Jagdish Bhagwati concept is, when you discuss an answer in economy, this is better. When you're writing an answer in ethics, this is better. So I hope you understood. Practically, this is possible. Theoretically, this is possible. Okay, so Amartya Sen says you have to spend on health, education, employment, etc. Okay, now there are some, this Robin Hood justice and all will be there, but we are not interested in discussing about that. I hope you know about Robin Hood justice. The problem is what? The means are not correct. Naxalism, the means are not correct, but the objective is good, the end is good, the consequence is good. So if you're going for consequentialist ethics, you need to support Maoism also, Naxalism also, Robin Hood ethics also. Okay, but we are not interested in doing that here. So I hope this is understood. This is what distributive justice. So distributive justice is all about socio-economic justice. Okay, so here focus is on social equity. Okay, any doubts? Now we can discuss.
Sir, golden mean concept, sir.
Which one?
Golden mean of Aristotle.
Okay, okay. Golden mean is all about, you should be in between. Like courage is a, when you talk about courage, it should not be rashness. You cannot show courage by being so rash at someone. That's not courage. So courage, when you talk about, it is between rashness and cowardice. You don't want to be cowardice. That means, you are reducing your level to the low level, very much upright. That's not the case. This is not courage. This is also not courage. So what should be courage? In between. Similarly, when we talk about generosity, generosity is a good virtue, but that doesn't mean that what? Prodigality. It should not be prodigality, that is one extreme. It should not be meanness, that is another extreme. So what we need? We need in between. So this is what you mean by golden mean. This is courage. So you don't want to show that your courage by being very rash to people. That's not courage. I hope this is clear.
Okay, sir.
Hello, sir.
Mm.
Sir, the
So
capital
one
punishment.
more point. See, for Aristotle, the virtuous conduct, for example, this is a virtuous conduct, this is a virtuous conduct or virtuous action. It doesn't mean that, or it consists of avoiding the extremes. Just avoid this and this. So that is what the golden mean. So avoid the extremes of excess. So you can say this is excess, this is excess, and this is deficiency. This is deficiency. So avoiding the extremes of excess and deficiency. That's what you mean by golden mean. Praveen, tell me.
Sir, whether the capital punishment will be justice by deterrence or is it retributive justice, sir?
That is deterrence. Also, it can be retributive. Both are almost same because you killed someone and you are giving the same punishment proportionate to that. It is retributive. At the same time, when capital punishment is given, it is deterrence also. So it is both.